Kelipot. So, why have I never heard of this game? About a week ago, I was randomly browsing through Steam, as one does in this pandemic, when I came across a game called Kelipot. I read through the synopsis of the game, saw it was on sale, and I figured, why not? It looked cool enough. After playing through every translated part of the game, some parts aren't actually finished translating, I was very surprised. It turned out to be a beautiful mix of roguelike and Metroidvania concepts with a really fun, quirky story and fluid but challenging gameplay. In Kelipot, you play as Abel, a tiger prince. After learning the basic controls, you stumble upon a merchant named Will. After helping Will out, you enter a room where Abel meets his brother Cain, and after fighting and beating Cain, Abel and Will are transported to what is described as a wasteland. From here, the story becomes a time-traveling adventure where Abel is trying to seek out his brother Cain. After playing Kelipot for a while, there was one thought that it would not leave my mind. Why have I never heard about this game? With how good it is, it should at least have been something I'd seen somewhere. I mean, most big indie games or whatever, you see at least something on them. But I looked it up on YouTube, and there are 2 videos that have any decent amount of views, both from Dangerously Funny. Why is this the case? Kelipot is not a perfect game, as we'll explore later in the video, but it's filled with tons of charm. It deserves to have recognition, which is why I'm making this video. This game is gorgeous. Straight up. All the characters are created using hand-drawn animations. The scenery, it's so good. It's similar to games like Cuphead or Hollow Knight. Well, there is one enemy that kind of looks stupid, the silly night dudes. I hate everything about them. Please delete them from the game. Hand-drawn games are such a pleasure to play, and Kelipot is no exception. And another place where this game just knocks it out of the park is the music. Just listen to this startup. This is what you hear when you first start up the game. Oh yeah, this is the good stuff. The only thing I have against the music is that there needs to be more of it. Every piece in this game is beautiful, hands down, no exceptions. I even think the music in this game rivals that of Hollow Knight, which is very high praise, as anyone who plays Hollow Knight would know. The other thing in this game that is done very well is the combat, which is very important in a game like this. The combat is not very complex, it's very simple. You can basic attack, which is where you just swing your sword. You can dash, which in most games makes you invincible. And you have a secondary attack and an ultimate, and that's it. You never gain any more than these moves. The game spices things up, however, in the fact that you can find different secondary attacks and ultimate abilities. So you start out with one basic projectile for your secondary, and your basic ultimate just destroys all the projectiles in the vicinity. But you can purchase upgrades to change what these do. For instance, you can, have a torch that burns enemies, and there's one ultimate that makes you invulnerable for a little bit. So it is cool because it keeps the core mechanics of just those 4 moves, but it changes it up slightly every time you play. But yeah, overall, this game feels really nice to play. I know I keep bringing up Hollow Knight, but let's be honest, it's kind of the gold standard for indie Metroidvania games. Hollow Knight feels great to play, and Kelipot feels the same way, albeit in a slightly different way. Whereas in Hollow Knight, you have a ton of movement options. You have double jump, dash, you can sword off of people, and all that different stuff. Whereas in Kelipot, you really only have dash for your movement options, but this lack of movement makes the gameplay a lot more reflex focused, whereas in Hollow Knight and other games, it's more decision making, oh, should I dash, should I jump, or whatever. Now, there's some things in Kelipot that are really unique, and a couple of which I'm unsure of if I like them or not. One aspect of the game I do know I liked that was very interesting and very unique was how the difficulty of the game was dealt with. Kelipot is a roguelike, so naturally it can be difficult at times. But in Kelipot, whenever you die, so every time you do a run, you fail, Abel leaves behind a grave. This grave can be collected in your subsequent playthroughs to grant you 1 heart. It can also be permanently destroyed to grant you some gold in your current run. This system leads to every attempt becoming a lot more manageable. I say manageable because it doesn't exactly make the attempts easier, but it does make them less brutal. Saying that out loud, it doesn't really make much sense, but you'll get it if you play the game. Next, let's talk about the story. The story's nothing special. I mean, it was enjoyable enough. There were a fair amount of cliches, but they weren't that annoying as all the characters are fun and enjoyable, and they really carried the story for me. The problem I have with the story is that it almost feels like it was used as a crutch to explain one problem I have within the game. The story is based around time traveling or dimension hopping, it's kind of both, to different versions of the same world. Now, this on paper sounds fine, like everyone loves a good time traveling story. The problem is, it means that in every new world you unlock, you play through the same few stages, each with slight variations in order to progress. I understand that in the roguelike genre, it's normal to keep going through the same ones to get to harder and harder levels, but in this case, it would have been so amazing to play through new levels in every world. Remember when I said this game needed more music? Well, that's because the music is the same in each world's version of a level. The castle level always has the same theme. The forest level always has the same theme. This also means that the enemies are also the same in each level. To be fair, in each iteration of the world, there is a unique twist to the enemies. For instance, in the second world, the enemies can sometimes respawn into stronger versions of themselves. But with how different and fun the enemies are, I just wish there were more of them. In my opinion, it sometimes feels like the creators used the story and the fact this game is a roguelike to lessen the amount of work they had to do. However, whether this is the case or not, the time traveling story actually makes the whole idea of the game being a roguelike more interesting. Every time you die, instead of dying, you actually just rewind time to the place before you entered that world. This is a really great touch, and because of this, I'm still kind of on the fence as to how annoyed I am at the smaller pool of levels. Now let's talk about the stuff I didn't like. First off, the sound design. Now, don't get me wrong, the music in this game is amazing. I'm positive I'll be listening to this music the same way I do with Super Mario Galaxy or Undertale, but the sound design is sometimes hilariously bad in this game. One moment you can just be listening to the saddest piano music, but as soon as you click enter to finish the dialogue, it just stops. Just deadpan. There's no transition or continuation. The music just ups and leaves. There's also this one really funny part at the start of the second world where there are these blue floating orbs of death that block your path, and you have to hit them to clear your path, and when you do, they make the loudest popping sound. Yeah, this is fine. It is nice that the music is so good because otherwise the abrupt changes in the music tone would get really cumbersome really quick. Another small complaint I have is the fact that not everything in the game is fully translated. The developers know this, and as such they do not claim the game is fully in English, and they're working on finishing the translation, so it's really a minor detail and it's more my fault, so I don't really dock any points off for that. The biggest disappointment for me in Kelipot were the bosses. While playing through each stage, combat feels great, everything flows smoothly, until you reach a boss, and then the boss attacks. And oh my goodness, what are those? For some reason, the bosses are designed to be bullet hell in style. Why? I have no idea. And because this game is hand-drawn in all other aspects, the developers decided to use the traditional ugly colored dots as the bullets. It just feels so jarring to see the normal enemy attacks look really nice and polished, only to enter a boss battle and see a plethora of tiny ugly pink dots. Now, don't get me wrong, the bosses are actually fun as far as bullet hell goes, they fit the bill really well, but why are they designed like a bullet hell game? I don't understand. Look at this attack from one of the bosses. Why couldn't they just make all the attacks be like this? These are really fun attacks to avoid and the timing to dodge them is really precise. But then look at his next attack and you wanna die. This man goes from throwing sword bolts at you to attacking you with sentient mud. That's so unique. But in the middle of these attacks, your screen gets flooded by a bunch of particles. I think honestly, I feel way more disappointed than it actually deserves, only because the rest of the game feels so good. I did enjoy these boss fights. They are difficult and beating each one does feel accomplishing, but the bullets just feel so out of place. So, as a final note, I did really enjoy this game. I haven't played through the final chapter as that one is not translated at all yet, but I can confidently say that this game is really good. Is it perfect? No, there aren't really any games that are, but this game deserves way more recognition than it currently has. If you love roguelike games and or just gorgeous games with good music in general, please check this game out. Also, don't forget to like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe for more random content, and put a game you think I should cover in the comments section. See ya.